Welcome to Crawford Technologies document retrieval demonstration. This builds upon the previous webinar where we stored AFP files into our dynamic document archive format, and in this demonstration we will use that storage and the index file that we created to do a retrieval and create PDF files on demand. We will generate interactive PDFs where we just retrieve one individual PDF, so that's sort of a user coming onto a website retrieving their document. We will also create a batch of PDFs where we will create 20 random PDFs from the file, and then we will create 200 PDFs in a parallel manner where you can see how quick the system can be even on a relatively low powered laptop. So first off, we just need to understand the basis of a query structure. A user comes in and they use the index data and queries against the database. So that's typically a metadata query against an SQL database to retrieve a set of results. So from their query, they will get a document list back. Behind the scenes, this document list is submitted to the content store, which may be the same database, but it could also be a separate database, a separate file system, a completely separate product in some instances, and that will go ahead and it will retrieve the individual documents from the content system, and then these will be returned by our products as PDF documents to the user to see and view. So a document is requested, the archive is queried, and the shared resources that we created in the individual documents are queried for the relevant elements, and these are pulled out in parallel, so we get the required resources in the individual documents, and this is then merged by a PDF transformation, and then the transformed document is returned to the user. Within the transformation, we can do a number of things. We can create a basic PDF, which is what we're demonstrating here, but future webinars will also show techniques for adding digital signatures, redacting elements of the document, or adding watermarks, saying copy or draft or not for distribution. And finally, we can also create a PDF-A version of the document, which is an archive format that contains all the resources within the PDF should you wish to use it in a different archive. So we will now move on to the demonstration. So the first demonstration will be an interactive demonstration where I will just retrieve an individual document from this archive that we've created. As you can see, we've already got our DDA archive and an index file, so I'm just running a little Rex program here, could be any language, to bring up a list of documents that are stored within the archive. And as you can see, we've got our 236 documents. So if I just pick one of these, I'll pick number 86, and that creates the PDF. And by default, we put everything into this output directory, and we can see we've got the account number 86, and we've got the individual PDF because it's just one page. It's just a one page long. So that's a straightforward use case, typically used for serving documents up to end customers. The second use case sort of shows off the performance of the system a little bit. And this actually creates 20 documents, so we'll just give ourselves a little bit more room and move this out of the way. In fact, we don't need this at all now, so we'll move that right the way out of the way. We'll move that up there, and then we can get a little bit bigger screen here, and you'll see why in a minute. So here we've run through and we've created 20 PDFs, and as you can see from here in the output directory, they're sort of random, they're random PDFs. At the same time, we've been logging this to the screen, the program that we are running, and the conversion time for each of the PDFs. And as you can see, they run in the order of 0.8 of a second for each conversion, and indeed the average is 0.9. Just under a second, just under the 10th of a second, so 0.097 of a second. These units are all seconds, and we can see up here, fairly consistent CPU spread across the 8 cores that I've got in this laptop. Obviously the CPU usage is quite high because I'm recording a WebEx as we are demonstrating this, so it's not an isolated environment. So we'll just run that again, and you can see, you know, fairly slightly quicker this time overall, 0.091, and we've got a slightly different set of outputs there, so we can do that as many times as we like. A little bit more interesting is to run the conversions in parallel. So this time we will pull out 8 lots of 20 documents, and we'll run that retrieval a number of times so that we can see the performance of the system. So off we go. I will explain what you're seeing on the screen once it has completed. First thing to note is the CPU usage is now maxed out 100% for that period of running. And what we've done here is we've processed 250 times iterations. We were running for 7 seconds. That meant we processed an average of 35.7 transactions per second, or nearly 3/10 of a second per PDF that we created. So we created 149 PDFs in the end, but we were continually deleting and creating them. And the screen that was scrolling past, you see 8 separate columns here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the vertical spacing shows how each of the conversions are distributed across the 8 cores of the CPU, and just as it scrolls off you can see how we had the CPUs maximized at 100% for that running. So the more cores you have in the machine, the more simultaneous requests for documents you can serve up to your customers, and that's particularly important clearly in a high volume customer portal environment. So I hope there we've shown you how we can retrieve the documents from the archive we created, how the fact that we're storing it in a proprietary format does not preclude us from creating industry standard PDFs, and furthermore how we see that the creation of those PDFs is very, very efficient and shouldn't be a factor in determining what storage system you wish to use. So in conclusion, I would just like to thank you for listening to this recording, and if you haven't already seen it, I would obviously strongly recommend that you go back and review our web storage recording, which will show you how we created that archive and the various options and choices you have when creating the archive. So thank you very much for your time.